A photo shared on Twitter shows 1233 staff bracing for the cuts, listening to an address by ABC boss Mark Scott. But the reality hit hard, with popular presenter Carol Duncan among the casualties.
There are teary people everywhere. I'm probably a little older and uglier than the rest, but watching everybody, particularly youngsters whose careers are just starting, is this day.
The artist has missed for more than 30 years. She started.
It's supposed at stage that Newcastle downgraded to a regional station, which means their budget will be cut substantially, and that my program be decommissioned.
Another high-profile loss is Sunday Show presenter Helen Clare, who tweeted she's very mad and sad. Other options to go include producers, a marketing manager and administration staff. Last week, hundreds rallied in Newcastle against the federal funding cuts, and today local Mayor Sharon Claydon added her voice in Parliament.
This is a hurtful day for my community. Cuts to the ABC are cuts to every member of our community.
Carol Duncan says she's been buoyed by support from listeners, and while her future is uncertain, she remains loyal to the ABC.
We need our auntie. You got to love your auntie.
Since the construction of Grahamstown has underwater built such a large piece of infrastructure. Set at Seal River, the facility turns trifluent from the Shortland wastewater, the grey water, into purified recycled water, said to be cleaner than what falls from the sky.
4 to 5% demand off our potable water supply, our drinking water supply, which is substantial. So it postpones that dam, desal plant or whatever it may be.
The Water Minister today officially opened the plant and turned to open an 8-kilometre pipeline to Orica's Kooragang Island facility. Dogged by negative environmental headlines in recent times, it signed a 15-year deal to take the plant's output.
It's not certified as drinking water, but as industrial water, it's just burped, and it adds to the sustainability of our factory. We're consuming water that humans wouldn't consume.
Orica, largest user of drinking water in the region, this moves it to 19th.
We use a lot of water through our chemical processes, in cooling, in generating steam, but also in our products. Some of our products contain 40% water.
The plant can produce 3.3 billion litres of recycled water each year.
Here's a good example where, everybody is a winner, the community, industry and certainly the environment. We are doing more with less.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The transformation of Catherine Hill Bay is starting to take shape, and this is what the beach's development will eventually look like. Hundreds of houses with parks and a small shopping centre. Parcels of land are selling between $220,000 and just over $1 million.
At the moment, we've released about 250 of those to the market, and about 220 lots have been sold.
But capitalising on these idyllic views has been a challenge for the Sydney-based developer. In 2009, the original proposal that was approved by the government was quashed by the Land and Environment Court. The developer regained approval in 2011, and all throughout there were protests.
We've always looked after what their concerns are, and as a result, the development has moved well and truly away from the actual village itself.
As part of the works, Montefiore Street will be closed to traffic from December 4 so it can be realigned and rebuilt. Once finished, it will be the main access point into Catherine Hill Bay.
Our works will actually get that and upgrade it where it will be Australian standards, and also there'll be a bicycle pathway as part of the works as well.
The entire project is expected to take 5 to 6 years to complete. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
Lake Macquarie has shown over the last sort of 5 to 10 years high rates of car theft.
Day one of a new regime, a group of directors keen on getting the Knights in order.
Good corporate governance, a good strategic plan long term, because no longer can a team just survive year to year.
It was also a chance for the 7-person board to meet and greet coaches, players and club officials. The NRL is underwriting the Knights for the next 3 years, and West CEO Phil Gardner is on board, something that's only strengthening talk of a takeover bid by the successful club.
Somewhere there'll be a transition to a new ownership structure. Somewhere in that, West will certainly play a part. It might be longer than 3 years, it might be shorter than 3 years. It comes back to where the National Rugby League see it sitting.
West is a community-owned club, so any such move would have to go to the members.
If we did take the Knights on, it's forever. There's no way out of this. So once we make that decision, we've got them.
Another new board member, former ARL boss John Quayle, was happy to acknowledge the contribution of former owner Nathan Tinkler.
People have got to realise without Nathan the club wouldn't have been here. And I think again he has put a considerable amount of resource into that.
The new chairman, meanwhile, was cautious when asked how many premierships he thinks the club can win over the next 5 years.
One will be enough. We've got to work towards that. It'll take us a bit of time.
Michael Kane, NBN News. So near, but yet so far. After producing 5 birdies in his third round to put himself in contention for the gold jacket, James Nitties fell just short on the final day.
Yeah, put myself in good position and was, proud of myself how I sort of hung in there.
Now it's time to refocus for the Australian Open, which starts on Thursday.
Going into the Australian Open is, it's exciting stuff because I can't wait. It's going to be an awesome tournament at the Aussie next week.
Once the summer of golf winds up, Nitties will return to the Web.com tour in the United States in a bid to get back onto the coveted US PGA circuit.
It's so cutthroat over there. You've got to play well every single day.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
Newcastle and the Hunter have been totally neglected by today's announcement. They've been left to fight on their own.
A golden glow lights the night sky. A small sailing boat on Lake Macquarie engulfed in flames, the aftermath of a lightning strike. Nick Mirabello was watching TV inside his Yarrawonga Park home when he says he heard a deafening bang.
We heard this almighty crash and my wife jumped out of the chair.
Little did he know it was his boat that had been struck.
10 minutes later my neighbour phoned and said, "Have you looked out the front lately?" And I said, "No, why?" He said, "Your boat's on fire."
The smallest boat in a sea of big fish. The chances of a direct hit were incredibly slim.
It's been a great boat, but it's gone.
It was the second time in as many nights the Hunter has been in Mother Nature's firing line. Late yesterday, the storm rolled in, bringing with it more rain, lightning and thunder.
Trees hit by lightning, houses with trees that have fallen onto the roofs and all that sort of stuff.
The storm season now well and truly underway.
We will probably be operational through till about March. Hopefully then it's going to quieten down.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
This is what the Newcastle Post Office looked like the last time NBN's cameras went inside. Broken windows, flooding and graffiti. 4 years later, we're told it's become even worse.
Internally, there are a significant amount of issues. There is a bit of structural, but there's things like asbestos and dead birds.
The Awabakal Land Council hopes to give the iconic building a new lease on life. It's finally been handed the keys and discussions with developers have begun.
We've been considering anywhere from hotels, conference centres, through to cultural centres and art galleries as well. So it's still pretty open.
But first a repair job is needed, and a costly one at that. The Land Council expects the bill to be between $5 and $10 million. Money it may raise by opening up land it owns at Warners Bay and Charlestown for housing. If the Land Council does sell some of its land, it could have the money to start repairing this beautiful old building as early as halfway through next year.
We've got the best interests of our community, but also the post office at hand.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
It's the idyllic gateway to Lake Macquarie, but Swansea Channel has also caused boat users a lot of grief. That's now set to change, with dredging to create a channel 60 metres wide and 3.5 metres deep.
It'll mean easy access in and out. It'll mean that people won't get stuck in the shallows, boats with the deeper drafts. Mean that Lake Macquarie Yacht Club will be able to run its offshore racing without difficulties.
100,000 cubic metres of sand is being pumped underneath the Pacific Highway to Blacksmiths Beach.
That'll assist with, as I said, the stabilisation of the dunes over there, as well as the golf club. There'll be benefits for the golf club as well.
It follows previous attempts worth millions of dollars, which saw sand pumped from shallow areas only to wash back in.
That was just a waste of money, absolute waste of money.
Last year, about 22,000 boats made use of the area, and that's expected to rise once the project's finished. But without further funding, there's concern about its future.
The long-term maintenance is really essential. past experiences prove that it's folly to delay it.
Pressure put on my state government to come up with an annual budget, and of course we'll be talking to Lake Macquarie Council as well.
The work is expected to be complete by Christmas. Lauren Kelly, NBN News.
The sad part of all of that is it's probably the tip of the iceberg. A great deal of domestic violence actually goes unreported.
They're our sons, our brothers, our husbands, our uncles, grandfathers, so we've got to be in it together.
Meet 69-year-old Dolores and 77-year-old Doreen, two of Newcastle's volunteer drivers for the Asian Cup. You could say they're no rookies behind the wheel.
I've got a good driving record, that starts there.
Oh my goodness, Vivian, I couldn't count how many times I've done something like this. Probably about 7 or 8 or more.
In 1956, Doreen was a volunteer driver at the Melbourne Olympics. She was just 19. Coincidentally, it was the year of the Asian Cup's inception.
Different time, different era. I was young. The security, of course, is very different. In 56, we could go anywhere.
And with so much experience comes a sense of responsibility. Giving official passengers an informed trip is a duty they take very seriously.
As I drive them from one place to another, it's a means of conversation to point out different aspects of the city and certainly to be able to answer questions about the city.
The reason they do it, to be a part of something bigger and represent their country.
We've got to keep that vibe going, you know, that wonderful aura there is around volunteering. And it's great because it's a great time. You have a really, really good time.
One thing's for sure, their passengers will be in safe hands. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
After matching it with the Asian champions, the Jets are now ready to tackle their next opponent, but the Brisbane match still haunts them.
Last performance in front of our supporter was the worst performance as we saw.
Phil Stubborn's side remained winless after 7 rounds, but there was plenty to like against the Wanderers. For Marcos Flores, scoring his first goal in the A-League after a long injury layoff was a dream come true.
To be honest, I was dreaming for that situation to score a goal. But when I done it, the only thing I felt in that moment was a relief.
After playing most of his junior career as an attacker, debutant Nick Calburn put in a solid display at right back.
The day before I got told that I would be sitting on the bench. It wasn't until just before the game that I got told, so it kind of gave me a little bit of time to prepare. A little bit foreign, just started with it this year, but you know, I'm happy to fill in anywhere that the team needs me.
The Jets host the Mariners this Sunday, another team desperate for a win.
I would tell you that is going to be the most important week for us all the year.
This week is it?
This week is the most important week.
Michael Kane, NBN News. It may not have delivered results to remember, but it was still a year Brock Parkes will never forget.
To be on the start line with the best in the world, you know, with Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez and all them guys, you know, that was just a dream come true.
After mastering superbikes, his step up to MotoGP proved a challenge as the Paul Bird Motorsport team struggled financially to match it with the big guns.
Halfway through the season there was no development, so we just had to try and finish the season the best I could and get the best out of the bike. But if you're at the back and you're on a bike that's not competitive, you're basically making up the numbers.
Parks is now 32, but he's not about to rule himself out of one day returning to the sport's biggest show.
I'd probably like to try to get back to World Superbike. I've got a pretty big plan with Yamaha. I need to get my confidence back again. I think I had a couple of big crashes this year and I just want to win races.
He's hoping those wins will come in 2015 after signing for the Milwaukee Yamaha team in the British Superbike Championship.
It's the biggest domestic championship in the world, and at the moment the British Championship is probably bigger than the World Superbike Championship, so it's going to be tough.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
As the Lord Mayoral change went on, so too did the weight of her new office. Last night, Nuatali Nelms used her casting vote to seek approval for a controversial 46.9% residential rate hike, nearly 10% more than what was predicted. That move was universally unpopular today.
As a ratepayer, I very much resent this.
That's ridiculous. Why would we want to pay more rates? I don't see a point in them doing that at all.
It's pretty steep. Yeah, very steep.
But the Lord Mayor says state and federal government budget cuts had forced council's hand.
If we want to move this city forward and maintain our assets, it's going to have to be done through rates. Now, I accept it's not popular, but it is a tough decision that council needed to make. And people will take political potshots at me for it, but I'm going to be a mayor that's going to be transparent and upfront with the community about how to move Newcastle into the future.
Meanwhile, the fate of 6 council-owned parks, including the new Lambton Heights South Park, has been delayed to allow for community consultation, and council has recommitted to several big-ticket items.
We put the art gallery redevelopment back on the agenda. We put funding for Renew Newcastle back on the agenda. So there was some really positive outcomes.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
The scene of what was every lifeguard's worst nightmare. Just before 1 p.m. yesterday, those on duty at Maitland Pool discovered a 60-year-old woman floating on her back. She was in cardiac arrest.
They were very quick in finding her and retrieving her from the pool. They are obviously feeling it, but they've replayed in their heads the way that they acted, and they know that they did everything they possibly could and followed procedures. And I worked very closely with Maitland Pool, and great operators, couldn't question their professionalism at all.
The woman was airlifted to John Hunter Hospital. As summer approaches, authorities say it's a timely reminder of how quickly things can change in the water. According to a report released by the Royal Lifesaving Society, 33% of all drownings are people aged 55 and over.
That's been mainly related to pre-existing medical conditions, not getting medical checks done, engaging in water aquatic activities, putting their body under duress.
Parents are also being warned that lifeguards are not babysitters and that it's important to supervise their children at all times. Emma Murphy, NBN News.
It's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas for Jackie Stamper. Thanks to the generosity of strangers and the Christmas warehouse, her little boy will find lots of presents under their tree this year.
It's really hard to make ends meet as it is, and then Christmas comes and you try and prepare yourself, but you just can't on Centrelink payments, so this is a really great help.
Families in financial difficulty can register to collect around $100 worth of donated toys per child, and demand is already weighing on the warehouse.
We're seeing a lot more people losing their jobs. We're seeing a lot more people who are homeless. We're seeing a lot more people who are unable to put toys under the Christmas tree.
We will anticipate seeing something like 800 odd families come through, and if there's an average of 3 kids a family, that's a lot of kids that we've got to supply toys for.
And the charities really do need people to start donating immediately, because this incredible hoard of hundreds of boxes filled with thousands of toys will run out in about 1 week's time. Details of where to donate can be found on the Samaritans website. Meanwhile, gifts of a different kind were being handed to 17 organisations today from the Newcastle Permanent Charitable Foundation. They're sharing in more than $800,000, which will go to a range of community projects. Madeleine McKell, NBN News.
A hidden piece of Newcastle unearthed. After decades below the surface, a section of well-preserved rail line is providing fresh insight into the city's industrial heritage.
It is in quite a nice state. I suppose that's what happens when it's been covered under asphalt for that sort of length of time.
Dating back to the 1800s, the line was exposed during the $4 million Bathers Way upgrade at Nobby's Beach. And while it's not exactly an unexpected find, it's still intriguing.
It's a great little snapshot of what this area used to look like before the beach and the beach pavilion, when it was much more industrial.
The line is an extension of the Great North Railway, which was opened in 1869. Its original purpose was to help shift large stones from the Waratah Quarry to what was then known as Macquarie Pier.
At that period, rail was king. Rail dominated everybody's lives.
From 1875, it was used to extend the Nobby's breakwater further out to sea before this section was installed as part of an upgrade in 1896.
You cannot imagine how dangerous the Port of Newcastle was before those breakwalls were installed. Incredibly dangerous.
Only in the last 50 years, the historic track has been hidden from sight until now. The old rail line will be cleaned up, photographed and sketched before it's added to the city's archives. Then it'll be removed.
We'll maintain as much of it as we can. Anything that sits under that pavement depth will remain in situ.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
Preparations to host a giant of Asian football. Cessnock is bracing itself for the arrival of tournament favourites Japan, who'll call the city home in January. Fans and a big Japanese media contingent are set to follow. Council greenkeepers have been given the task of preparing the playing surface at the sports ground to suit the Blue Samurai.
They were very particular about the quality of the turf, and we're managing to get our mowing heights down as low as we can to meet their needs.
Since opening in 2004, the field has predominantly been used as the home ground for the Cessnock Goannas, but that's briefly about to change.
This facility was designed with that in mind, to be used for broader community uses, not just rugby league.
Well, this is the surface that the Blue Samurai will call home up until January 12 before their first game of the Asian Cup against Palestine. And it seems that there's more benefits off the pitch than on it.
The whole event itself will have a significant benefit to our community now and into the future, I believe.
The Hunter Valley Football Association also hopes the visit will boost junior playing numbers.
There's a huge buzz around Japan being here. Hunter Valley Football are very keen to work with the AFC in the hope to give our local kids the opportunity to see Japan train.
Michael Kane, NBN News. A performance like this is what Shane Tritton will be praying for in the Miracle Mile. Suave Stewie Lombo heads into the big race on the back of claiming the Cordina Sprint last weekend, maintaining a winning record.
He's never been beaten with her on over the mile at an angle, and he's definitely proven himself as being a true miler. So, hopefully, we get a bit of luck at the start.
After missing the last 2 miracle miles due to suspension, Dry Lauren Pennella will be looking to make up for lost time with Suave Stewie from Gate 8.
Barrier draws aren't really a worry for me. I'm still driving the same. The tactics won't change, and it's just a really big thrill to be in the race.
Tritton's other hope, Easy on the Eye, drew Barrier 1, giving him every chance of being in the mix.
Easy on the Eye is new. We've only had him just under 2 months, so he's definitely a new kid on the block, and he's drawn a good barrier. So they're probably even chances, I'd say.
Defending champion Bo Tide will start as favourite.
He's going to follow the speed and he's going to get to do whatever he wants. But gee, there's some good horses in the race, and I wouldn't be counting any of them out.
Can we see 1 and 2?
Oh well, a dead eat will do.
Michael Kane, NBN News. This is the car the 12-year-old girl was forced to steer through oncoming traffic as her father lay dying beside her. The 51-year-old was driving along Carnley Avenue at Qatar just before 9 o'clock last night when he had a suspected heart attack. As he lost consciousness, his daughter jumped behind the wheel.
Look, it's just amazing. As I understand it, the accident was witnessed by an off-duty police officer who has nothing but praise for this 12-year-old girl and her capacity. No formal lessons, never been taught to drive a vehicle, able to steer around oncoming vehicles, saving lives, saving injuries, perhaps her own life.
The car hurtled downhill through a 70km/h speed zone. The young girl managed to steer her father's car here into this tree, bringing her nightmarish ordeal to an abrupt end. Miraculously, she escaped uninjured. She was taken to John Hunter Hospital and treated for shock and is now home with her mother. Sadly, her father died in hospital. The tragic story and her response has captured the heart of the community. Today, NBN's Facebook page was flooded with praise. What a brave little girl to keep her head in such a traumatic situation. What a heroic young lady, and so sad and brave. Just a few of the many comments. Police plan to recommend her for a bravery award.
I'd certainly say she's brave. You know, I have a 12-year-old. I don't know that my 12-year-old would have been able to do this.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
It's one of the largest court developments in Australia, and it's now topped out at 7 stories, a new addition to the Newcastle skyline. Attorney General Brad Hazzard today checked on the progress of the high security courthouse and the views from the rooftop and the 14 holding cells on the ground floor.
This is going to have 10 separate courts. They'll be state of the art, the latest technology.
750 workers have been on site. The fit-out is well underway. But parking looms as a problem. There are just 25 spaces and the rail line is about to be terminated.
To have this courthouse right in the middle of Newcastle is always a challenge, but it is about making sure that we work with Newcastle Council to ensure there's adequate parking and, of course, adequate connection through public transport infrastructure.
The development's billed by the government as one of the state's largest justice construction projects, but the Minister for the Hunter was MIA today. Gladys Berejiklian hasn't shown up in Newcastle since September 4. The Premier hasn't visited for 100 days.
This is what happens when you've got a Minister for the Hunter who lives in Willoughby, someone who's not located in that area and therefore really not that interested in what's going on.
Newcastle is absolutely at the centre of the Liberal National Party government's focus.
The Minister says that now that the parliamentary sitting period is over, she's looking forward to visiting the area in the near future. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Positive results from today's operation with all the vehicles that were tested complying with their noise requirements, so that's a great result, and we'll continue to work with RMS to make sure that heavy vehicle drivers are complying with those limits.
Hunter Valley Quality Meats is hiring. In what's been a difficult time for Up Hunter in terms of the mining industry, the Primo-owned abattoir has found opportunity. It says it usually struggles to employ locals.
We found it very difficult to encourage local people and or people from outside our region to apply for jobs here. And the simple answer to that is they were getting good money working in the mining.
The jobs boost follows criticism from the union about the company's use of workers on temporary visas, but the Meatworks insists it wants to hire locals.
We will give them first option, if they're suitable for employment, to take a position here.
Plans for a $40 million expansion at the Scone site are on track, which will generate an extra 120 jobs in the next 18 months.
With the downturn in the mining industry, we all know that some people have lost their jobs, and that's a terrible situation. But here's an opportunity that people can pick up on.
But the Meatworks could soon be changing hands, with Brazilian processing giant JBS making an offer to buy Primo. Primo says the transaction offers tremendous opportunities and that it's looking forward to being part of JBS and capitalising on its international distribution network.
We're not hearing anything about cuts. We're only hearing good news stories about putting on more local employment.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
Lots of different perspectives of Newcastle in the one day, so particularly visitors who are short on time, even locals who'd like to get a different perspective on their own town.
I think there'll be plenty to keep me busy, but I still want to be able to be involved in things in the community, and I'm not a reader, so once the garden and the lawn's made the first day, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll be looking forward to it.
If this Sunday's F3 derby needed some spark, the Mariners captain was happy to provide it.
Overall, we're a better club and we've always been a better club than them, and we want to prove it again. They're just frustrated at their own club's poor results and poor showings. Look, I don't really like their stadium, to be honest.
Those comments left the Jets coach stunned.
Yeah, I find that quite incredible, really, for people to show disrespect in that way. It's obviously going to be a bit of a pep up for our boys.
Stubbins was keen to remind John Hutchinson about an incident during the Mariners' clash with Adelaide last weekend.
He got brought off last week and, there was a problem there that we saw.
On the pitch, Newcastle will be looking for revenge after losing its opening round clash with the Central Coast late in the game.
It's a derby. The form sort of goes out the window with that. And look, it'd be nice to put on performance there and get the 3 points.
Joel Griffiths was back into full training today, showing no signs of a recent toe complaint, while Marcos Flores is a confirmed starter against his former club.
For him to get another 66 minutes or whatever it was last week was really genuinely very good for Marcos. He'll back up again and he'll start. I've got no problem in mentioning that.
Michael Kane, NBN News. The defending SCG Cup champions have made light work of limited overs cricket.
We enjoy the one days, that's for sure. I think it suits our style of play. We like to be aggressive and hit the ball as hard as we can, as fast as we can.
The Hamwicks did just that last Saturday, defeating Toronto without getting out of second gear in its 119-run win. The club now wants that form to flow on to two-day games, starting this weekend against Newcastle City.
Josh has talked about us as batsmen applying and being a bit more patient. And yeah, that's something that we work on at training, and I'm sure it'll filter through in the two-day games.
The all-rounder made himself unavailable for the Newcastle representative side, which last weekend played its way into the final of the country championships, and he has no regrets.
I'm almost too old to keep playing rep cricket, but I enjoyed playing the 2020s down in Sydney at the start of the year, and that's something that I'll put my hand up for again next year, definitely.
Off the pitch, Sam Webber works for a cafe for Response Services, an organisation helping people with disabilities.
It's nice to be able to help people reach outcomes in goals, and I'm grateful to have that opportunity to be in a position to do that.
In other round 8 matches, top of the table University take on Waratah, Stockton play Cardiff, Merriweather host Charlestown, the Kookaburras face West, and Belmont take on Wallsend. Michael Kane, NBN News.
Simulation training isn't a new concept, but the Australian Defence College at RAF Base Williamtown is hoping the University of Newcastle can help take it to the next level.
Despite all of the learning you might get from a book, it's not the same as appreciating it from a real perspective.
The two parties today signed a Memorandum of Understanding, an agreement that will see IT students develop their own simulation prototypes.
It'll allow them to further enhance what they've learnt at school with a real-world application.
And that, it's hoped, will involve spearheading technology that would put the participant in the thick of the action.
we can't actually shoot at people in training, and this gives us the opportunity to be able to show it what it might feel like using a simulator.
From the virtual world to the real world, across the tarmac, progress on Newcastle Airport's new terminal is far from a simulation. The walls have gone up on the $14.6 million project, which is scheduled to open early next year.
We're on budget and we're on schedule.
While work to entice international airlines back to the region is also making headway.
The key data is telling us that New Zealand is the most demanded destination for the Hunter region, and after that probably Fiji.
All going to plan, the first flight could be jetting off overseas before next Christmas. Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
Libby Townsend's life came to a grinding halt 18 months ago when she was diagnosed with leukemia just 2 days after her 24th birthday.
At first it was just, fear. Why is this happening? I can't do this. And then, I guess eventually as I came to terms with it, I had to tell people what was going on, so I kind of had to get it all straight in my head.
Libby originally put her fatigue down to struggling with adult life.
I'd been tired and stuff, but I'd started working full time and I was commuting to the Central Coast for work, so I was like, I'm probably just tired from that.
Doctors assured her that early diagnosis increased her chances of a full recovery.
The first thing that they said every time that I talked to them, because you're so young and because we've caught it so early, there were so many more options, I guess, and they were a lot more optimistic that, treatment was going to work and I was going to get to remission.
Hunter Youth Cancer Services specialist Dr. Liz Hesk says there are 5 symptoms young people should be looking for.
Persistence of pain, the presence of a lump and bump that's new, the persistence of fatigue or fever, fatigue similar to what Libby had in hers, the presence of weight loss and a change in a mole.
And for the youth of Newcastle, Libby has just one message.
If you're feeling unwell, if you're sick, don't ignore it. Even if you think, it's probably just nothing, go to your doctor, get checked out.
Meredith Gibbs, NBN News. A delicate mission in the smallest of spaces. A firefighter crawling into a stormwater drain in search of a ginger kitten. Its cries first heard by Anne Jennery on Tuesday from a drain outside of her unit.
So I laid down from 10 o'clock that night till daylight, just laying there talking to it and saying, "It's all right, Bubby," because it kept screaming and carrying on. It was so upset. And I got bruises, my ribs hurt because I kept putting my hand in to try and reach for it.
The RSPCA and local firefighters have coordinated the rescue for 2 days, an operation made more difficult with the kitten trapped in an intricate system of pipes.
It's running up and down the pipe, which is a good sign. It's still meowing after 4 days, which probably means it's getting a feed from its mother, but it's just in a situation where it can't get over a lip or something like that.
While firefighters accessed one drain entry, the rest were digging for another. But after more than 12 hours, the team had done all it could.
There's a sump between themselves and the cat. We created a bridge for the cat to get across with some cat food to try to entice it out.
Fingers crossed he or she decides to come out soon. Renee Feder, NBN News. Over the next 3 months, Novocastrians will be treated to Australian artist Patricia Piccinini's Like Us exhibition.
This has been a wonderful opportunity to bring work from the last 15 years of my practice together.
For the first time, her most famous piece, The Sky Whale, is linking up with the rest of her collection.
It's great to have them together. I've never had that before. She's always just appeared in a balloon festival or in the sky, but today she's with the rest of her world.
Her other works include hyperreal sculptures of not quite right humans, with the artist getting her ideas across by using different mediums.
So I can jump around from sculpture to video to drawing and use different materials. So that's what I've done in the show. I've tried to show the public the breadth of the practice.
Some could say her work is so lifelike, it's almost real. Meredith Gibbs, NBN News.
Yeah, all three grades will be playing, grade C and S and the juniors. We've had advice from Cricket Australia through James Sutherland that to get out there and play cricket, that'd be the best way to pay our respects to Phil Hughes.
It's a united front by a couple of chairmen in an attempt to garner more support for the red and blue.
The Newcastle Knights, as a community club, needs lots of members to be financially viable.
We are a football club for the people of this region.
After coming through a period of uncertainty, the NRL is now underwriting the Knights for the next 3 years, but the Members Club chairman is hoping to see the membership swell from over 15,000 to more than 25,000 in the next 12 months as a safety net. Nick Dan's also hoping a deal can be struck between the Knights and the West Group to protect its future.
Wests are a natural fit. I think Wests are essential for the viability of the Knights. Very pleased they've got Philip Gardner on there as a director. He'll be able to look at things very closely.
But to get that over the line, West need to pass it on to their own members.
So it certainly would cost our members. We think over time that could be a reasonable cost that could be assumed by members, but somewhere in that our members will have a say. I can assure all our members that we'll be doing the best thing for the members, for the Knights and for the community over that period of time.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
Hunter and the Sydney East teams have played in the last 5 finals, and it's been 1 or 2 goals between them. To win by that margin meant that our players really lifted in that final game.
Beautiful coastline, bordered by not-so-beautiful infrastructure. Newcastle Council has some grand plans for revitalising the land between Newcastle Beach and King Edward Park.
A new skate park for young children, like a street-style skate park, so upgrading what we've got. We'd love to have an area, particularly where the road's been closed and you've had that old dingo fence, where we could have sculptures by the sea. There's also enough room to have exercise equipment and fit some more parking in, a kiosk.
All up, this section of the Bathers Way project has a $17.3 million price tag attached to it. Council has applied to the state government to fund the bulk of the cost under the Restart New South Wales scheme. The Lord Mayor says the works would not only beautify the area, but also solve landslip and cliff instability issues and remediate the seawall as well. Upgrade works under the same project between Merewether Beach and Dixon Park have seen visitor numbers soar. Ms Nelms believes that success would be replicated here.
We've seen pedestrian counts increase from 500 people an hour up to almost 900 people an hour in some places. Now, this particular piece of coastline, because it's so run down, only has around 120 pedestrian movements an hour.
If the state approves the $12 million grant, work will start next year. Madeline McKell, NBN News.
It's bleak, but not all bad. After months of calls to bolster the Hunter's waning manufacturing industry, another report showing the damage. The research, which surveyed 54 manufacturers, indicated 2/3 of employers have had to lay off staff.
The figures are suggesting 8,000 to 10,000 people over the last, say, 18 months to 2 years have been taken out of the manufacturing sector of the Hunter.
Economist Alan Rye describes the outside forces on the industry as two dark clouds.
The first one is a high unemployment rate. It's roughly doubled over the past year to a year and a half. And the second one is lower growth that's forecast for the national economy.
The statistics are stark. 1 in 6 young people are currently looking for work in the Hunter. Earlier this year, thousands took to the streets in Newcastle to garner support from the state and federal governments, calling it the biggest blue-collar crisis since the closure of the BHP. While the report points to lowered overseas demand, a soft labour market and disappointing investments as barriers to the sector, it also details new avenues like industry collaboration and innovation as possible saviours for local manufacturers. Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
Safe at last. 5-week-old Trouble sparked a full-scale rescue mission after getting stuck in a network of drains. And Jennery first heard the kitten's distressed cries 4 days ago. She was overcome with emotion when the feline was finally freed.
I started crying and like it was my kitten because I bonded with it the night I was sitting down there all night with it.
20 RSPCA officers and firefighters joined the rescue effort, which was made extremely difficult by the sheer number of intersecting tunnels the cat was roaming through.
I dread to think how many man-hours has gone in. There was, I think, 9 hours the first day. There was at least 5-6 the next day.
After 4 days of trying to get the kitten to come out of the tunnels with no luck, rescue officers yesterday afternoon decided to try and set a trap for it here by this tunnel. And at midnight, they finally had success.
Little Trouble will be looked after by the RSPCA until he's old enough to be adopted, and Ms Jennery believes this kitty cat has a special destiny to fulfil.
There's got to be a good reason why this kitten was born, and it's got to go to somebody they really appreciate it and make them really happy.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
plenty of fun and games at training today ahead of tomorrow's derby, where the Jets will be chasing their first win of the season. Mariners skipper John Hutchinson's comments about being the better club has gotten under their skin, with Ben Kennedy returning serve.
Fired the boys up, and personally I think they probably should worry about themselves. They obviously got some problems themselves, so you might be looking to take a bit of the heat off that.
Kennedy made a solid return to the starting 11 last week. And the Maitland boy isn't fazed by his time warming the bench in the first 6 rounds.
I just knew I had to wait my time, and fortunately enough I got a chance, and I believe I did pretty well last week, so just looking to improve on that.
He has Mark Birighitti breathing down his neck, but perhaps not for long. It's believed there's been more overseas interest in Birighitti, but nothing is expected to be done before the January transfer window. There's one change to the starting lineup, with Scott Neville returning from a groin injury, with his understudy Nick Cowburn back to the Youth League. Meredith Gibbs, NBN News. The Jets wasted no time getting on the scoreboard, Victoria Huster beating Adelaide's Melissa Barbieri within the first 10 minutes. The hits came early, with Riley Dobson taking out the opposition. The side continued to look threatening, with Tara Andrews testing Adelaide United's keeper. She picked up Libby Coppice-Brown, but she too couldn't beat the keeper. Adelaide started to put something together but couldn't follow through. While down the other end, an Andrews header was on the wrong side of the post. After half-time, Dobson put the Jets 2 up. They could have gone 3 up, but Emily Van Egmond was denied by the far post. Only seconds later, she had another chance, but the goalkeeper put her body on the line to leave it at 2-0. Meredith Gibbs, NBN News.